After divorce, she and her baby found refuge in a motel. What the neighbor revealed was incredible. Sarah sat at the worn formica counter of the diner, her fingers trembling as she scribbled down another order. The scent of grease and burnt coffee clung to her skin, mixing with the faint whiffs of baby powder that lingered from her daughter Emma, blissfully asleep in the makeshift crib beside her. Every time the bell chimed above the door, her heart raced. Was it someone looking for a warm meal or a reminder of her bitter reality? Each passing customer highlighted her isolation, as laughter flew overhead like a mocking wind. Alone, she felt tiny, swallowed by a life that unraveled like an old string. And the shadows of her past, memories of her marriage haunted her. Moments that transformed her into this frazzled version of herself, a failed wife and a single mother living in a dingy motel on the edge of town. She was drowning under the weight of bills and a fractured sense of self, teetering on the fragile edge of despair. Yet amid this hollowness, there was an ember of ambition flickering. Her lost dream of becoming a writer, buried deep beneath layers of insecurity. At that moment, Mr. Jenkins shuffled inside, his gait slow but determined, his eyes old yet perceptive. The elderly war veteran often sat at the corner booth, presiding over the diner like a guardian angel. Sarah had almost forgotten how to engage in a conversation that didn't revolve around coffee refills and dessert orders. Their exchanges felt sacred, a gentle reminder of resilience, mirrored in the softness of his stories. As he shared tales from a life marked by conflict, survival, and lessons learned in hardship, she couldn't help but feel a spark igniting within her. But how could a waitress with a fraying heart possibly hold a candle to his illuminating narratives? Amidst rushing orders and clinking silverware, a thought gnawed at her. Could she resurrect her voice, her story? It blended with an alarming fear. What if she exposed her soul only to be dismissed, laughed at, or worse, ridiculed? Desperate to quell the storm brewing inside her, she found herself distracted, conflicted, longing to write but terror-stricken by the weight of judgment. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Settling into a dusty nook of Mr. Jenkins' attic one rainy afternoon, she rummaged through forgotten boxes while he regaled her with tales of his youth. Then she stumbled upon a manuscript, a heartfelt reflection of the struggles that echoed her own. As her eyes danced across the words, something shifted within her, propelling her to reclaim her lost dream, but acceptance vacillated with trepidation. What if her story wasn't worthy? What if, God forbid, it revealed more than she was ready to confront? As she clutched her pen, racing thoughts clouding her clarity, she faced the crucible of self-worth and fear. Sharing her truth could unravel everything she'd carefully built, putting her fragile world at risk. Just as she caught sight of potential victory, life struck again. A daunting revelation from Mr. Jenkins would soon intertwine their fates in ways she could never have envisioned. Now she was left to grapple with an urgent question. Could she bear the weight of her own story when shadows of the past loomed dangerously close? The rain pitter-pattered against the window, creating a rhythm that matched the erratic pulse of Sarah's heartbeat. Mr. Jenkins had left her with much to ponder, his last words echoing in the space between them. The stories we carry are the burdens we choose not to share, he had said, his voice both gentle and steely, a reminder that vulnerability can reveal strength. Even as she sat in his attic, a dusty manuscript clutched in trembling hands, a familiar weight of doubt settled on her shoulders. Every word she read intertwined with her own experiences, failures, hopes, dreams, and echoes of heartbreak. Questions loomed like thunderclouds. What if she laid bare her own narrative only to discover it elicited nothing but silence? Would she become an outsider not just to her own story but to life itself? Clenching her pen, she took a deep breath, attempting to summon the courage that had eluded her for so long. With ink against paper, she hesitantly penned her thoughts, allowing the memories to flood her mind, unfiltered. The struggles of being a single mother, plagued by an ex-husband's criticisms that rang louder than her internal voice of resilience. She realized that her power lay not in her past failures but in the ability to rise from them. As the pages began to fill, a sliver of clarity broke through her haze. Each word became an act of reclamation. She could absorb the fragmented pieces of her identity and shape them into something meaningful. Her fear transformed from a paralyzing force to a catalyst for action. With a renewed determination, she vowed to embrace the role of storyteller. Her voice would not be silenced by shame. The diner buzzed with lunchtime rush when Sarah returned, her heart lighter, more vibrant. As customers filled the chairs, their laughter no longer felt like a chorus of mockery but rather a sign of life's ebb and flow. She began to interlace small stories into her interactions, a whimsical anecdote here, a shared laugh there. With each connection, she felt the heaviness lifting, revealing layers of her resilience beneath. The urge to write morphed from an echo to a roar within her. Sarah began to save snippets of her experiences in a crumpled notepad, jotting down phrases that danced in her mind. Moments may shatter, but they also create, one note read. Grabbing onto this idea, she sought solace in her words, crafting her narrative one thought at a time. However, the more engaged she became in re-establishing her voice, the more uncomfortable her surroundings felt. The lingering discontent of not only her life but also those of her fellow diners began to weigh heavily on her spirit. She saw mothers fighting to keep their families together, fathers weary from long days, and couples fraught with unspoken tension. They were mirrors reflecting her own struggles, and that realization beckoned a visceral response deep inside her. Perhaps I can inspire others with my journey, she mused quietly, picturing a book filled with stories not only of her life but those around her as well. But then the shadow of self-doubt re-emerged with a sharp sting. What would readers think? She recalled Mr. Jenkins's words, pondering if she would ever find the strength to share this with the world. Was the risk worth the potential humiliation, or could vulnerability forge a connection that was undeniably powerful? Lost in this inner turmoil, she approached Mr. Jenkins later that evening. "What happens when someone doesn't want to hear your story?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man paused, his eyes curiously searching her face, and as he locked onto her gaze, she sensed his understanding of the struggles even beyond her own. "The truth of your story will resonate with those who need to hear it, Sarah," he replied, resolutely. "The fear of rejection is only as strong as you let it be." In that moment, her resolve solidified like concrete hardening from liquid. Sarah's journey was only just beginning, filled with potential paths yet to explore. She circled back to her knowledge, her manuscript waiting for completion. But first, she needed to confront her own fears, as they threatened to smother the warmth of her emerging creativity, and as she prepared to leave, another question flickered in her mind, burgeoning with urgency: who would she ultimately become if she dared to share her story, and what truths would she uncover along the way? As the sun dipped below the horizon, a warm glow seeped through the restaurant windows, golden light spilling onto the tables where laughter and conversations mingled. Yet, Sarah remained enveloped in the tempest of her thoughts. Each new day felt like a delicate balancing act between crafting her own narrative and facing the hidden fears that seemed determined to undermine her burgeoning resolve. The diner's atmosphere became both an inspiration and a reminder of life's vicissitudes. Sarah busied herself with tasks, but her thoughts were restless. The way the other patrons engaged, the mothers sharing whispered secrets, the single fathers cracking jokes, echoed her own struggles, magnifying the weight of her aspirations. Could she be the voice that bridged those personal gaps? The gnawing question persisted, paralyzing her with self-doubt and vulnerability. With renewed determination, she brought her notepad to the diner each day, transforming a corner booth into her sanctuary. Phrases turned into paragraphs, and soon, the kitchen grease-stained paper held her threads of resilience. "Every struggle has a hidden strength," one line proclaimed. Yet, amidst those bursts of creativity, her fingers still hesitated to traverse the uncharted waters of self-disclosure. The chatter faded as she meticulously reviewed her writing, each stroke of the pen tightening her chest with uncertainty. Memories of her turbulent marriage resurfaced, hushed arguments echoed like whispers against the walls of her mind. Reliving those moments felt unsettling, as if she were on the precipice of a personal avalanche, teetering between the desire to share and the instinct to retreat. One evening, as she tapped away at her notes, a voice broke through her reverie. "You seem awfully lost in those pages," a passing customer remarked with a warm smile. It was a young woman, perhaps in her late 20s, with an earnest expression. Sarah's pulse quickened. It was an intrusion but also a moment of unexpected connection. "Yes, it's just a bit daunting," Sarah replied, her voice trailing off, perfectly aware of how personal her thoughts were. She wasn't ready to open that gate yet. "Writing can do that, bring up all sorts of things," the woman continued, an understanding twinkle in her eye. "If it makes you feel any better, I left my husband last year. I've poured so much into my journal." The woman's admission struck Sarah like a bolt of lightning, illuminating a path where she had only seen shadows. "Really? What has it been like?" she asked, curiosity overpowering her hesitation. "It's terrifying, liberating, and sometimes heartbreaking. But every time I record my experiences, I feel a piece of my burden lifted," the woman confessed. "It's like reclaiming your narrative, piece by piece." As they exchanged words, Sarah felt a quiet shift in herself. Perhaps she wasn't alone in this struggle. The act of laying bare one's soul, despite the risk of exposing vulnerabilities, was strangely freeing. The conversation reaffirmed her goals, revealing a crucial part of her journey, gaining strength through shared experiences. That night, Sarah returned home with a renewed sense of purpose, her manuscript feeling lighter in her bag as if infused with possibility. She began to outline her chapters more decisively, defining those turning points in her life. With each letter, she wove in the threads of resilience drawn from her diner conversations, the strength garnered from her own misfires, and the stories of those around her. But buried within her newfound enthusiasm was a persistent echo of fear, one that taunted her each time she considered how she'd confront her ex-husband with the truths of her narrative. What on earth would he think? Would it ripple through their past like a stone dropped in water, leaving scars in the wake? She tucked her unwavering determination into her thoughts and wrote with fervor, the ink flowing as a cathartic release. Yet a gnawing urge punctuated her writing. What if she shared her story, and it backfired? What if she became even more vulnerable than she had anticipated? As she penned her latest thoughts, Sarah sat back, a twinge of anxiety wrapping her heart. It was a true test of courage, one that began with confronting the shadows of her past. What awaited her on the other side? The moment approached when she'd have to face him, her story unfolding like the fragile pages in her notebook. Would she be strong enough to shield herself against his possible retribution, and what unexpected truths lay beneath the surface of her own narrative, waiting to be unearthed? With dawn barely breaking, Sarah clutched her notebook tighter, the familiar diner enveloping her in a sanctuary. Each page bore witness to her evolving tale, yet a palpable tension churned in her chest. Today felt different. It wasn't merely about weaving her narrative, it was about reclaiming her life, and that meant confronting the demons that had taken residence in her mind. Her usual booth felt more like a battleground than a safe haven. She caught sight of her reflection in the glass, the shadows beneath her eyes mirrored the weight of the choices ahead. With a deep breath, Sarah opened her notebook, steadying herself as her pen glided across the pages. Words began to flow, but they were tainted with doubt. What if she overstepped? What if her truth ignited unwanted backlash from her past? Determined to drown out the inner turmoil, she scribbled the details of her story. Each moment writhed with tension as memories surfaced, particularly those of the night she had confronted her husband about his infidelities. It was a bitter turning point that had set her on this path. The anger had been a hot flame, it burned clean, but it also left scars. Suddenly, the buzz of the bell above the diner's door snapped her from her thoughts. A man entered, his presence commanding yet disheveled, an odd contrast to her surrounding petite, cheerful patrons. Her instinct for observation kicked in. As he settled into a booth across the room, his eyes drifted around the diner, momentarily landing late on her. A jolt of recognition coursed through her. Was he someone she had known from her past life, or merely a reflection of her internal struggle? The server approached him, and Sarah turned her focus back to her writing. As time trudged on, snippets of his conversation echoed off the diner walls, filtering into her consciousness. He was speaking emphatically about starting anew, about shedding his past, an echo of her own aspirations. Was there a connection here, a shared understanding that transcended mere coincidence? Feeling emboldened, she tore a sheet from her notebook and penned a small note. "If you're battling with your past, know that you're not alone," she wrote, folding the paper and hesitating. A ripple of fear gripped her. It was one thing to express vulnerability in her manuscripts, but to reach out to a stranger was another matter entirely. Yet, if she was to own her story, perhaps this was a chance to step further into that courage. As she stood to approach him, her heart raced. Was she capable of forging an unexpected connection? Was this the kind of newfound strength that she sought? The man looked up just as she reached his booth, an inquisitive expression on his face. "I hope this doesn't sound odd," Sarah began, her voice shaking with the weight of the moment. "I couldn't help but overhear you talking about starting fresh. I'm on a similar journey." He smiled, an understanding gleam in his eyes, and for the first time, she felt the sun break through her clouds of doubt. "It's not odd at all," he replied. "Honestly, sharing helps take the weight off." Their subsequent conversation sparked a flicker of hope within her. Words flowed as they exchanged stories, each revelation stripping away layers of past shame. This man, whom she had only just met, laid bare the fears that had paralyzed her. Yet, as the chatter around them faded, another storm brewed in Sarah's mind. Could she truly take such a leap of faith when it came to her writing the deeply personal journey about her marriage and self-discovery? After parting ways, invigorating excitement coursed through Sarah. She hastily returned to her booth, the ink pouring forth onto paper as her fingers felt liberated, unburdened by self-doubt. Secrets emerged, tales of when she felt invisible, moments when she fought to be heard. There was power emanating from her words now, the kind necessary to face her ex-husband. But just as she reached the crux of her writing, a text buzzed on her phone. The name was unmistakable, sending a jolt through her body. It was him. As Sarah stared at the screen, the walls of her newfound confidence began to tremble, her mind racing with the implications. What did he want? Was it a gentle tap on her past, or an ominous shadow drawn back from its hiding place? In that precarious moment, she hesitated, torn between the freedom she had just discovered and the looming specter of her former life pulsating through the screen. Would she summon the courage to respond? The stakes had never felt higher. As another chapter of her life unfurled before her, she realized a truth buried deep within. The time had come to, once and for all, confront the shadows, a confrontation she had never anticipated nor felt prepared for. What would she reveal, and what uncharted territories awaited her as she took the plunge of self-discovery? The moment hung in the air, suspended between past and present. Sarah stared, fingers clenched around her phone, as the text from her ex-husband stared back at her, a simple question that carried a weight she hadn't anticipated. Her heart raced, the pulses echoing the tumult of her emotions. She thought about their last encounter, the painful words exchanged, the door slamming shut behind him as he left her with nothing but silence. What could he want now? Taking a measured breath, Sarah wished she could keep the confidence she felt moments ago, the empowerment of sharing her story with a stranger. Yet, everything seemed overshadowed by the impending dread of revisiting her past. Her pen hovered above the paper, words slipping away like water through her fingers. Would being true to herself mean embracing this confrontation, or would it only unravel the progress she had made? Before she could second-guess herself further, she tapped out a brief response, then hesitated again, staring at the screen as if it could offer her some sage advice. What was she hoping to achieve? Closure? Or perhaps something deeper, a lesson in forgiveness? She sent the message, each letter stitched together with turmoil and resolve. Then she did what felt impossibly bold. She closed her notebook and slid it into her bag, not as a retreat from her writing, but as a commitment to herself. Today wasn't about chasing after ghosts or avoiding turmoil. It was about confronting it head-on. Moments later, she glanced outside the diner window. The brightness of daylight seemed more vibrant, infused with possibility. She remembered the man from earlier, the spark of connection they shared. With renewed determination bubbling inside her, Sarah knew she wanted to cultivate that very openness in her writing. She wouldn't shy away from her truth anymore, not for the sake of comfort, and certainly not for the fear of judgment. This was her story, and the world deserved to hear it. Her truth was worth sharing. As she rode the wave of her inspection, she decided to revisit the barista's counter, recovering her courage to speak more to the man. They had shared so much within a fleeting hour. What if he could become part of her journey, a confidant or a mentor? After all, she was at the dynamic crux of self-discovery, and inviting others in could only further her purpose. But before she could act on that urge, her phone buzzed again. Her hands trembled as she glanced at the screen, his name lighting up once more. Instinctively, she pushed down the rising tide of nerves, inhaling deeply and reminding herself of that flicker of hope. Hesitantly, she opened the text, a warm, almost apologetic message laced with an invitation to meet. Rational arguments swirled in her head. Meeting him could mean reopening wounds. She needed to be cautious. Yet the idea of setting forth into this new territory coaxed her forward instead. Perhaps this was not merely an invitation but also her opportunity to assert her boundaries, to show him she was not the same vulnerable woman he had once walked away from. The urge to respond suddenly solidified into a decision. She would meet him not to reconcile, but to demand clarity, to declare that she had moved on. She wanted him to see a reflection of her greater journey in every new step she took. So, clutching her bag tighter, Sarah made her way outside, cutting through the early morning bustle as her heart pounded against the rhythm of anticipation. She felt as if she was standing on the edge of a precipice, the complexities of the moment whispering promises of growth and self-realization. What if this isn't just a meet-up? She wondered aloud. What if it's a confrontation? With that thought hanging in the air, she made her way towards their designated spot, a place that could very well become a crossroads in her journey. As she approached the meeting place, her mind raced with the weight of her resolve. This time, she intended to leave no part of her untold. Doubt began to creep in again, but she quelled it. The moment had arrived for her to unravel the layers of her past and weave a narrative that firmly embraced her strength. Would she empower herself enough to face her ex-husband as she had faced her past? The door opened before her, and she stepped through it, feeling the weight of her story unfold anew. Would she reclaim the voice that was once stolen from her, or would that voice falter at the sight of a familiar face? The cafe buzzed with chatter and clinking coffee cups, yet it felt eerily silent to Sarah. As she approached the table where he waited, her heart drummed a cadence of both dread and defiance. She hadn't seen him in months, yet the familiar outline of his silhouette was etched sharply in her memory, like an unwelcome photograph. "Sarah," he greeted, his voice a mix of warmth and reservation. She took a seat opposite him, acutely aware of the table's barrier, both physical and emotional. They began to exchange pleasantries, but each word was measured, weighted with the memories that lingered in the background. Her resolve tightened as she recalled the pain entwined with their past. This was not merely a casual rendezvous, she sensed the gravity of the conversation that lay ahead. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, locking eyes with her. "I thought it was time to what?" She interrupted, her voice steady yet tinged with an undercurrent of anticipation. "To explain why you walked away." He faltered, taken aback by her boldness, but to her surprise, he didn't retreat. Instead, he nodded slowly, as if acknowledging the truth of her words. "I know I hurt you," he said, his sincerity palpable. "I wanted to apologize. I didn't handle things well." The admission hung in the air, and for a moment, Sarah's resolve wavered. Could she allow herself to hear him out? It felt risky, yet here she was, a living testament to the resilience she had fought so hard to cultivate. "You hurt me," she replied, voice firm but steady. "I can't just brush that away with an apology. I need to understand why you chose to leave when things got difficult." He leaned back, a flicker of guilt crossing his features. As he recounted his perspective, his fears, his avoidance, she felt a strange mix of anger and empathy stir within her. This was not the person she had known, he had transformed into a figure wrapped in regret. Yet in that moment, a realization struck her: she was no longer the frightened woman who had once felt abandoned. Sarah felt an inner strength rising to the surface, pushing against the chains of the past. Each word he spoke served to fortify her spirit, not as a victim, but as a survivor determined to claim her own narrative. "I had to rebuild my life without you," she said, the assertiveness of her declaration like a bomb. "I spent too long feeling unworthy of love. Your exit forced me to confront my demons, not just the ones we shared, but the ones I never faced." Silence fell between them, a heavy pause as he absorbed her words. She held his gaze, challenging him without flinching. This was her moment, a bridge to the future where she dictated the terms. "I can't go back to who I was," she added, finding empowerment in her vulnerability. "I've found my voice." She could sense the shift in him, the acknowledgement of her transformation. While it didn't erase the past, it offered her the chance to redefine who she was going forward. "Sarah, I admire your strength," he finally said, his voice tinged with newfound respect. Her pulse raced. It was the acknowledgement she craved, not as a way to reconcile but as a mark of her growth. The conversation soon transitioned to lighter topics, but the foundation had irrevocably shifted. As they spoke, Sarah found herself reflecting on how far she had journeyed, not just away from him, but toward an authentic version of herself. As she exited the cafe, she felt an exhilaration swell within her. Today had not merely been about confronting her past, it had been a reckoning with her own power. And there, amongst the noise and bustle of life, she understood that the path ahead was hers to chart freely. But even as the excitement coursed through her, a nagging thought lingered at the back of her mind: could the past creep back into her life in ways she hadn't anticipated? What if this newfound clarity led her to uncover deeper truths about herself, or even confront unexpected obstacles on her path to healing? The question loomed large as she moved through the streets, a renewed sense of purpose propelling her forward, but always shadowed by the uncertainty of the past's lingering influence. As Sarah navigated the bustling streets, the air felt charged, rich with possibilities and uncertainties alike. The encounter in the cafe was a keystone moment, a striking reminder of her journey from victimhood to empowerment. Yet, the nagging thought persisted: was she truly ready to face the depths of her evolution, or would her past seek to pull her back into its shadows? She stepped onto the sidewalk, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows that mirrored her inner conflict. Each footfall felt purposeful, an affirmation of her new resolve. She decided, then and there, that the next step in her evolution would involve actively pursuing her passions. It was time to turn moments of introspection into tangible action. That evening, with a fresh notebook in hand, she found a quiet corner at home. It felt liberating to write not just about her feelings, but about her aspirations. Goals swirled on the paper, each one demanding attention. A career pivot, perhaps. She had often pushed aside her desire to explore a more creative path, convinced it was impractical. But she now allowed herself the luxury of dreaming, pen gliding across the page as she sketched out ideas for a side business centered on her love for art and design. In her heart, Sarah felt the heat of ambition stirring. After years of silence, her voice craved expression, an honest outpouring of creativity that wouldn't be confined to her past. The thought of sharing her designs with others made her pulse quicken. She imagined the liberating joy in seeing her pieces come alive, not just as concepts but as realities. However, doubt nibbled at the edges of her excitement. She questioned whether she could balance the demands of a new passion with the familiar responsibilities that had once consumed her. Would investing in herself mean neglecting the support systems she had built? In that moment of introspection, her fears morphed into reflections. What exactly was she willing to sacrifice, and what did she need to protect? A change of scenery was necessary. The four walls felt stifling, like they could eclipse the potential expanding in her mind. She made her way to a local gallery that had recently opened. It felt like the very heartbeat of creativity. As she walked among the exhibits, something stirred within her, a deep resonance of belonging. Amid the collages and sculptures, a vibrant, abstract piece caught her eye, bursting with colors that mirrored her tumultuous emotions. It taught her an important lesson: art wasn't just self-expression, it was a dialogue, a way to convey the complexities of who she was becoming. She pondered, What if she could be part of a conversation like this? Her thoughts drifted to the community of artists, each one carving their own niche in this space. She felt a tug toward connection, toward learning and sharing. With that thought ignited a fire of determination within her. Maybe it was time to approach some of these artists. What did they know that she could learn? The invitation to collaborate with other creatives felt like an opening to a new chapter. It would require stepping outside her comfort zone and daring to share her ideas, risking rejection. And yet, in a life now defined by choice rather than circumstance, she grasped the reality that these experiences could enrich her journey. As she prepared to leave the gallery, a strange sensation washed over her, making her heart race. She spotted a flyer for an upcoming art collective meeting advertised on the wall. Its bold letters beckoned to her like a siren's song, an open call for artists to share their work. Could this be her chance? What might happen if she stood up and introduced her vision? The tension tightened around her chest and exhilaration danced on the edges of her mind. It was an avenue to confront her doubts head-on and turn them into stepping stones, inching ever closer to the life she envisioned. The thought lingered as she stepped back into the world outside. The uncertainties of the past would never disappear entirely, but now she held the tools to navigate through them. The streets once again became a tapestry of opportunity, ready for her to embroider her new narrative. As she moved forward, a powerful realization dawned on her. Each decision laid a new brick in her foundation. Suddenly, it struck her she wouldn't just be reclaiming her past, she would be shaping her future. Getting involved meant vulnerability, but perhaps it also meant authenticity. The question remained, was she ready to expose her vision to the world, to test the waters of her ambition, and potentially confront critics who may challenge her fledgling ideas? The upcoming meeting loomed ahead, and with it, the opportunity to transform possibility into reality. The nerves curled in Sarah's stomach like knots as she approached the gallery for the art collective meeting, the flyer still clutched tightly in her hand. The crisp evening air did little to quell her rising anxiety. What if her ideas weren't good enough? What if the images she had imagined in her mind were nothing more than illusions? Each step felt heavier, the pavement almost sucking away her determination. As she reached the entrance, the vibrant chatter of fellow artists floated through the door, a chaotic symphony of excitement and passion that contrasted sharply with her internal discord. She took a deep breath, willing herself to embrace the moment. She needed to remind herself that this wasn't just about her, it was about connecting with others who shared her longing for creativity. Once inside, the atmosphere enveloped her. Cheery laughter echoed against the gallery walls, mingling with the smell of paint and varnish. The art displayed around her was a wild assortment that stirred emotions within the serenity of a sunrise alongside the intensity of an abstract explosion. Sarah's heart quickened, and for a brief moment, she allowed the art to absorb her fears, filling the void with inspiration. As she made her way to the corner of the room, she overheard snippets of conversations, discussions on techniques and materials that she felt ill-equipped to join. Doubt crept in again, whispering insidious thoughts about her abilities. Who was she to think she could belong here? Then she saw him, an older artist named Ben, known for his striking landscapes and mentorship of emerging artists. He was engaged in an animated discussion, gesturing passionately. His presence seemed to draw the attention of the room, embodying a confidence she envied. Could she approach him? The thought of opening herself up to critique paralyzed her momentarily. After several moments of indecision, Sarah finally rooted herself in the belief that this was her moment, a chance to confront everything that had once silenced her. She approached Ben, her heart pounding, and introduced herself. To her surprise, he welcomed her warmly, encouraging her to share her aspirations. As the conversation unfolded, Ben's engagement sparked a flame within her. She began to articulate her dreams of creating a line of wearable art. Words flowed more freely than she expected, detailing her vision infused with vibrant colors and emotional narratives. She sensed a shift inside herself, a transformation from apprehension to excitement. Ben listened intently, nodding as she spoke, prompting her deeper reflections. Following their discussion, a larger group convened, and Sarah found herself in a circle of new faces, all eager to hear about each member's artistic journey. Her confidence surged as she shared her story. For the first time, she spoke about her past not as a burden but as the foundation for her current aspirations. The vulnerability she displayed drew empathetic glances and applause, unfamiliar warmth wrapping around her like a comforting blanket, yet, amid this newfound camaraderie, the sting of comparison infiltrated her excitement. As other artists shared their successes and experiences, an undercurrent of self-doubt surged within her. She battled the whispering doubts that returned with sharpness. Was her ambition just a fleeting fantasy? Would the spark of inspiration burn out before it truly ignited? The meeting wrapped up with a call for collaboration, an irresistible opportunity to create alongside established artists. The thought was intoxicating, but it also beckoned a terrifying risk. Was she ready to expose herself further, to place her ideas into the hands of those who could either nurture or dismiss them? As people exchanged contact information, Sarah hesitated. The decision to engage was no longer simply about art, it was a testament to her willingness to assert her identity, to step into a role that had eluded her for so long. Finally, she resolved to be brave. Just as she reached for her own business cards, another voice cut through the optimistic noise. A challenge issued by Ben, daring each of them to present at the next meeting. Suddenly, the clarity of her desire solidified, and she understood this was a crucial turning point. As she sought out a partner for collaboration, the energy shifted, and her heart raced at the implications of this commitment. What would happen if she poured her heart into this presentation? Would it propel her fears into the background or shine a spotlight on them? The meeting ended, but Sarah stood rooted in place, her decision hanging heavily in the air. She had the chance to transform her dreams into something tangible, a beacon of hope amid the shadows of doubt. But would the fear of rejection or the thrill of acceptance drive her forward? The crowd began to disperse, and Sarah's pulse quickened as she pondered her next steps. She couldn't ignore the urgency of the moment. It was time to confront not only her aspirations but the doubts that sought to define her journey. As she took a deep breath, a familiar resolve ignited within her. The time had come, she would indeed confront her hesitations head-on. Walking away from the gallery, she held more than just her cards. She carried a vision of herself as part of this creative tapestry. But one question lingered, heavy with possibility: was she ultimately ready for the exposure that came with this risk? Would she rise, or would she retreat back into her shadows? The days that followed the meeting felt charged with expectation, yet elements of Sarah's life remained as mundane as ever. Each morning, she stood in front of her bathroom mirror, seemingly determined to face her fear. Yet, as she applied her makeup, the reflection that stared back at her was caught in a battle, a wavering blend of artist and imposter. She had spent sleepless nights sketching out her ideas for the wearable art line, but when morning arrived, the vibrant concepts felt more like shadows of dreams than tangible plans. The sketches, filled with color and life, starkly contrasted with the oppressive weight of her self-doubt. Each pencil stroke echoed her fears, creating a tenuous link between her creativity and her anxiety. Sarah frequently revisited Ben's challenge she was to present at the next meeting, but how could she reveal herself when she felt so unworthy? Determined to prepare, she decided to meet her collaborator, Jenna, a spirited textile artist she had met during the previous gathering. Jenna possessed a bold determination that Sarah found both inspiring and intimidating. They met in a cozy cafe, its walls adorned with local art, imbuing the space with a sense of possibility. Sarah fidgeted with her napkin, her stomach tumbling in a familiar dance of jitters. Jenna arrived and instantly filled the air with her exuberant energy, a whirlwind of ideas overflowing like a painter's palette splashed onto the floor. "I've been thinking about our project," Jenna exclaimed, pulling out a vibrant spool of fabric that shimmered in the dappled light. "What if we created pieces that tell a story about resilience and celebration? Your art can reflect the journey, and I can add the texture." Sarah felt a rush of excitement, but it was quickly quelled by a harsh inner voice questioning the viability of such ambitions. Did she truly have a story worth telling? As the caffeine buzzed through her veins, she found herself trying to focus, absorbing Jenna's ideas but simultaneously grappling with the urge to retreat into silence. "Sarah, are you with me?" Jenna's voice snapped her back to the moment. "Yes, I am. It's just I don't know if my vision is strong enough," Sarah confessed, her voice trembling with uncertainty. Strong enough for what? Jenna asked, her brows furrowed in concern. If it matters to you, then it's enough. We're not here to impress the world, we're creating for ourselves. That's the beauty of it. The notion resonated deep within Sarah, flickering like the light from the candle on their table. Perhaps this project could indeed allow her to express much more than just colors and fabrics. It could be a confrontation with her insecurities, an unveiling of the layers she constantly kept wrapped tightly around herself. As they delved deeper into brainstorming, Sarah could feel her confidence begin to bloom, sparking a revelation she hadn't anticipated. The project wasn't simply a method of expression, it was an arena for her to confront past failures, a platform to assert her identity boldly. In the following days, she diligently worked alongside Jenna, cutting fabric and stitching the first pieces together, piecing them like fragments of her scattered thoughts. As each creation radiated color, it also began to tell her story, one of survival and rebirth, artistic vulnerability juxtaposed with resilience. Yet, just as she immersed herself, shadows of self-doubt began to creep back in. Her past failures loomed large. Every stitch reminded her of moments before, when she hesitated and faltered. The looming presentation loomed like a storm cloud, threatening to overshadow the progress she had made. In quiet moments, Sarah pondered the idea of vulnerability. Daring to share her art meant risking the exposure of her deepest fears. Would sharing her story resonate with others or expose her insecurities further? Confronting this fear felt like standing on the edge of a precipice, wavering dangerously close to the edge. The date of the presentation approached, each passing hour amplifying her anxiety. Would her heart stay true to her art, or crumble under the harsh lens of judgment? As she stood before her canvas late one evening, adding the final strokes to what felt like her most authentic piece yet, an unexpected resolve ignited within her. But the thrilling uncertainty remained. What awaited her at the meeting could either solidify her newfound confidence or crumble it into dust. With her heart racing, Sarah closed her eyes, whispering to herself like an incantation, "I will rise." As dawn broke, illuminating her tenacity, she faced the day with a burning question pressing in her chest. Was she ready to step into the light, or would she once more retreat into the shadows? As Sarah prepared for the presentation that could redefine her future, a newfound sense of empowerment coursed through her veins. She dressed deliberately, choosing a vibrant scarf that felt like an extension of her artistic spirit. It was a small nod to the journey she had taken since the days of despair, the days when she felt tethered to the past, swallowed by insecurity and self-doubt. Now, she stood taller, wearing her story like armor. Arriving at the gallery, she took a deep breath, her heart racing in rhythm with the pulse of her aspirations. The warm light flooded over the artworks, illuminating her journey like a spotlight on her resilience. She had gathered not only to showcase art but to share the essence of who she had become. As the voices around her melded into a chorus of anticipation, she felt an electric thrill rippling through the room. Moments before she took the stage, the shadow of doubt whispered in her ear, threatening to undermine her hard-won confidence. Was she enough? But each echo of those fears had now become a fading reminder of who she used to be. They no longer had the power to fragment her resolve. When it was her turn to present, she stepped forward with a newfound sense of authority, and, looking into the eyes of her fellow artists and mentors, she felt the weight of her narrative pressing against her. Gritting her teeth and with every ounce of courage concentrated within her core, she started to speak about her journey, the unraveling of her past, her painful reawakening, and the clarity she had uncovered. Each word was a thread weaving her experiences into a strong tapestry of hope and determination. "I have learned," she proclaimed, "that my voice matters. It matters within me and to those who might find solace in my shared journey. My art isn't just a reflection of what I've lived through, it's a celebration of where I'm headed." As Sarah spoke, the initial tremors of anxiety melted away. They were replaced with the realization that she was not just recounting her past but claiming her future. In this presentation, she became not just a participant, but a beacon of possibility. By sharing her truth, she transcended the barriers that once held her captive: fear, insecurity, shame. With every piece of art she shared, she unveiled not just fabric and design, but the very essence of her transformation, each stitch a representation of perseverance, a narrative element woven with emotion. When she concluded her presentation, the gallery erupted into applause, and she saw appreciation reflected in the faces around her. Their recognition felt like validation, a fierce acknowledgement of the strength within her journey. That evening, as she walked home beneath the streetlights, a sense of accomplishment washed over her, not just for a successful presentation, but for deeply connecting with others on a fundamental level. The doubt that had once stifled her felt like a distant memory. Her once fractured self was no longer just a weary single mother but an artist with a distinct voice and vision. Weeks later, at the gallery's opening event of her collection, people were drawn to her pieces, whispering admiration and recognition of their own battles. Sarah had carved her place in that vibrant community, one where artistry reflected resilience and empowered connection. In that moment, surrounded by praise, Sarah realized she had accomplished more than merely launching her wearable art line. She had ignited a transformation that permeated not just her own spirit but inspired those around her. She finally understood that embracing one's narrative was not about vulnerability as a weakness, but rather a powerful reclamation of identity. Each person who engaged with her art was now connected to her story. They became part of a larger opus about survival, renewal, and hope. As Sarah looked out at her audience, beams of light catching the vibrant textiles she had designed, clarity struck her. The real triumph lay ahead. She felt an undeniable conviction that her journey was just beginning. It's time to share this moment, Sarah thought, reaching into her bag for her notebook. The pages had seen transformations similar to her own, an evolving narrative filled with courage and dreams yet to be realized. Resolute, she knew it was time to write, to keep crafting her story, guiding others along the path of self-discovery as she had done. The journey had revealed her strength, and she couldn't wait to see where the next chapter would lead. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible ending, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, because true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel.